Hey guys, welcome to Home Sweet Homeschool. My name is Ashley and I'm a homeschooling mom to one. And today I'm continuing my series on how we use the Brave Writer arrow guides in our homeschool. If you want to know more about what an arrow guide is or what Brave Writer is, check out my other video that talks about week 1 and it'll tell you how to find Brave Writer and what Brave Writer has to offer. So today's video is all about week 2, what we did for our second week using this arrow guide. So if you want to find out where you can find these, please check out my first video. What I want to start with though is how we ended week 1. What you're going to see right here is reverse dictation. So we're going to talk about reverse dictation. This is what happens at the end of the week after you've spent a week with the book. Your kids have picked out the spelling words that they think they need some help with, and they've worked with the passage. They've worked with the grammar, they've worked with the punctuation, and they're ready at the end of the week. So reverse dictation allows the student to be an editor. So they're not really having to correct their own work, they're getting to look at someone else's work. So I just got out a red pen. This is one of those friction erasable pens, so just in case he messed up, he has an eraser. So I always give him a red pen. And then I also like to give him, and this can be printed, when you print your arrow guide, you can also print, if I can find it, there is a page that has the proofreading marks on there. Let me show you what that looks like. That looks like this. And so this is nice to have when your child is about to edit. If you go over this beforehand, these are the things that I would like for you to look for. So with him, I knew that we were looking for things to capitalize because we had been talking about proper nouns. And so I wanted him to make sure that he was looking for those proper nouns in the passage. He also was looking for spelling mistakes. And so I told him just to put an SP if he found any spelling mistakes. And then I left a box on mine so he could add commas because that's what we were talking about this past week. And so those were his things. So it's good to have this page out if you are going to do that. So this is what his page looked like. I just typed this up in Word and I just made a couple of mistakes. I made a couple of errors. Of course, I left out all the capitalization. I did misspell the words. These are words that he had picked at the beginning of the week that he might have trouble spelling. So he worked on them all week and his job is to correct them on this page. And then I just put a box where the punctuation was missing, and I only did the punctuation we had talked about, which were the commas. And so that's what he worked on. So you prepare the passage once your kids have picked out their spelling words, and once you've decided, this is what I want them to focus on, you type the passage up. I did triple space it so he would have some room. We did talk about the passage and the things that he needed to look for, because I like to give him a heads up. I don't want him to just blindly go into it. I want to give him a heads up of what to look for. And then you hand it to him and you let them do the editing. So when they're finished, you can go over it with them and say, oh, look, I noticed that you picked out all the proper nouns, and I noticed you found the misspelled words. And then he just came to the bottom and spelled the words correctly. So I know that his practice paid off. He remembered how to spell them, and that's great. So that's how reverse dictation works. And again, this is all in. When you buy the arrow guide, you're going to get a whole information packet about how to do all this. So if you don't want to do reverse dictation, there are some other ways that you can do it, but this is what I like to do. So this is how we ended week 1, and now I'm going to show you week 2. So what happens in week 2 is you make sure that you read past this point. So I don't even start this until I've read past chapter 4, page 36. So we just work on reading a little bit each day. And then once we've gotten past that and he's heard this paragraph, this is when I start this. So we sit down and we read this paragraph together. We talk about anything that he notices. And we've been discussing dialogue beforehand, a couple of weeks before, so he realized and he can pick out when there's a bunch of dialogue in a story. So this is the copy that he gets. So this will sit in front of him. And then, of course, she always tells you why she picked this passage. And this passage has a good example of subtext. And she does a really good job explaining what that is and how you can explain that to your child. And so we talked about what subtext was. And I just highlighted where they were showing that so he would understand this is how they're showing it in their writing. So I highlighted that for him, and we talked about that. She also tells you what to note, and this talks about how each person's dialogue gets a new paragraph. So we went and looked back in there and we pointed that out. We also looked at the way theater was spelled, and then we also talked about some words which he already knew these words and knew what they meant because we've watched the Netflix series of A Series of Unfortunate Events. So he had heard these words and knew this, but she will point these out for you. Again, you want to read this ahead of time, how to teach the passage, and so knowing ahead of time what subtext is and how to point it out to your kid is really important. And I just highlighted things I wanted to make sure that I said to him. And then we talked about when is what you say different from what you mean. And so we talked about sometimes in our own lives where we say things that, you know, it's different from what we really mean. So that was we had a really good conversation about subtext. Then she also gives you the grammar notes. And so her grammar notes this week is how to put the punctuation in conversation. And this was great because sometimes he gets a little confused on this. So this was good to go over. And I just took these sentences and I wrote them on a little small dry erase board. And we pointed out the different things that she was talking about, like where the question mark goes and where the comma goes. And then we just came back in here and I got him to highlight the quotation marks and the punctuation so we could see where it goes in a sentence. And so he enjoyed doing that. He's getting a little bit better about knowing where to put the punctuation. Then we had a lot of fun. We did this this morning actually. We work with compound words. So I don't do all of the arrow in one day. You can split this up into many days. And so the first day we did talk about subtext and we talked about quotation marks. And then this morning after we read the story and we talked about the paragraphs some more, then we did this fun with compound words because they do borrow a cookbook from Count Olaf. And so we talk about how cookbook is a fun word. It's a compound word. And we read all of this about compound words. We also played a game called Frankenwords that you would probably see back in my August morning basket. I got it from Ollie's. It's creating compound words, and it comes up with some really silly compound words. So we played that really quick this morning to kind of get us thinking about compound words. And then we did this. She had a challenge where you set a timer for 2 minutes to see how many compound words you can come up with. And so my son was really excited about that. So he got his iPad out. He set a timer, and I just wrote down as he was saying them, so that's why it's so messy. I just wrote down as many as he could come up with. And so he had a lot of fun doing that. So this is week 2. Of course, what will happen is we'll continue to read this week. Tomorrow I'll probably touch on quotations just one more time just to make sure he understands. And then on Friday, he'll do reverse dictation again. So if you have any questions about week 2, please leave them in the comments below. If you want to know what we did last week, please find my video on how we use the arrow guide week 1. And also be looking for week 3. That will come out next week, and I'll show you how we handle week 3, which is usually where we start looking at the literary element for the whole book. So thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.